everyone, this is Tox from critshappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. This is the continuation of the Pathfinder adventure card game solo gameplay what we were doing from our critical review. If you haven't seen the beginning of this, we'll have a link in the video so that you can go back and see the very first few turns of how we got to where we are in this grand scenario of an adventure. This is a really challenging scenario that we're fighting here. We've already encountered Black Fang twice. We're about to move on and try, after closing the temple location, to search either the Shrine of LAMASHTU or the Desecrated Vault. But we're having an absolute blast as our solo paladin. However, we're down to only 6 cards in our deck, 4 cards in our hand, and 2 locations to get through. And worse yet, we know that not only is Black Fang in one of these locations, we also know there's ancient skeletons in there as well. So, while we had a challenging time just exploring what we thought was going to be a safe temple, it's now going to get even more challenging as well. We hope that you're enjoying it so far. If you have already watched the critical review and you're coming back, thank you so much for joining us and continuing the adventure with us. But for now, let's get our paladin's shield and sword and delve into Black Fang's dungeon. Alright, so the beginning of our turn, we could normally examine the top card of the location deck, but we don't have anything at our location. So the very next thing we're going to do is actually going to go ahead and flip over the blessing and then move to another location. So we're going to flip over the blessing from the top of the blessing deck, and we're going to look at our 2 locations. And I think what the better thing to do right now is we'll go ahead and shift these guys down, and we can move the closed location off to the side over here because we're not going to need that anymore. Now, in terms of the Shrine and the Desecrated Vault, if we were to move, let's just say we're still here, if we were to move to the Shrine, it says, if you encounter a blessing, we are dealt 2 points of mental damage that may not be reduced. That's bad, especially when we know there's 3 blessings in there, if not 5, because of the losses to Black Fang we had before. But when we close it, we have to succeed at a Divine 6 check or banish a blessing. Either one of those is going to be really easy for us. And on closing it, we can banish a blessing to draw a random blessing from the box. So we'll have to see how that works out. The Desecrated Vault has a little more monsters and a little more danger. And it says, if you would defeat a Bane with the Undead trait here, roll a d6. And on a 1, the monster is undefeated. Well, just like normal undead, they just keep coming. The Shrine really worries me because of all the extra blessings that are in there. And really, because we can't reduce that damage, all we would have to do is run into 3 blessings and we would be dead. So, I think we're going to move to the Desecrated Vault and see what we can get going here. Alright, so now that we have moved, it's now time to go ahead and explore. So let's go ahead and explore and see what our first thing is. Wow, we get a ghost, which is a monster. This has a check to defeat, combat of 12, or wisdom divine of 8. Well, that's really good for us since we're a paladin with the wisdom divine skill. We also have under our powers, it says the ghost is immune to the mental and poison traits. Well, thankfully we're not going to be playing too many with those. If your check to defeat does not have the magic trait, the ghost is undefeated. Wow, that's going to be interesting. So we have to have the magic trait to go ahead and defeat him. Whew. And if he's not defeated, that means we're going to be taking some damage. And that's not very good. Well, this could be a good time to go ahead and use our Holy Light. The Holy Light says, for your combat check, discard this card to roll your divine die plus 2d6 with the magic trait. So that's going to be good because we need to have the magic trait to make sure he's defeated. However, if the check is against a Bane with the Undead trait, instead roll your Divine die plus 2d12. So in this case, we're going to roll 2d12s, a d8 plus a d2, or plus 2, excuse me. There is such a thing as a d2 actually. I saw it once. It was really interesting. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and roll this, and we get 16. Plus 4 is 20, plus 2 is 22, which is more than enough to defeat our monster. Now, when you defeat a monster, they simply go back to the box. So they are gone. They don't come into your hand. You don't get them as any benefits, but you also don't have to worry about taking any damage, which is really nice. So, the Holy Light came in very, very handy. Now, we have 3 cards. Do we want to push on or do we not? I think let's go ahead and end our turn. We'll reset our hand and draw a card. Then we're going to go ahead and at the beginning of our turn, we're going to look at the top card of our deck, and we have a monster. Okay, if it is a boon, we can put it on the bottom of the deck, but in this case, we're going to have to put it back on top of the deck, and it is a shadow, so that's going to be very, very bad. All right, flip over the top card of the blessing deck, and we get the Blessing of Aristil. Here we go. Oh, we can either move and run away from there, or we can stay and encounter that shadow. I say let's go ahead and stay and encounter that shadow. All right. Combat 13. Yikes. The shadow is immune to the mental and poison traits. If the check to defeat does not have the magic trait, the shadow is undefeated. When you are dealt damage by the shadow, you must first choose blessings to discard as your damage, if you have any. Wow. All right, that is really, really rough. Unfortunately, our mace is not a magical mace. That would be really, really nice. I don't know how much we have that we could deal with this. This is going to be pretty rough. Discard to add non-combat, and defeat a monster. Yeah, the Blessing of LAMASHTU would help us, but the problem is it would give us 2 dice to defeat the monster, which would give us 2 more d8s. We'd be rolling 3 d8s. However, we don't have any magical abilities at that point to go ahead and fight it. We could discard the top card of our deck to add a d6, but if it's a blessing, we would recharge it. However, we don't really have a way of getting a magical attack in on this person. So this could be pretty painful. So what's going to happen here is if we can't defeat this guy, he's going to get shuffled back into that deck. This is going to be pretty harsh. I think... Oh, wow, this is going to be tough. Let's go ahead and use the Blessing of the Gods to try and make sure we don't have any kind of damage. We're going to go ahead and reveal our mace, so we will add a d8 to our melee, our strength attack basically is what we're going to be fighting here. So we're going to add a d8 and a d8 and a d8 to make sure we don't take any damage. We're probably not going to defeat him because it's not going to be anything magical, but we're going to make sure we don't have to discard any of the cards from our hand. So we get a 2, we get a 3, and we get an 8, so we have 13, which is just enough to go ahead and beat him. However, because we didn't defeat him with a magical trait, he's considered undefeated. We don't take any damage, but he is going to be shuffled back into this deck. Now, that's dangerous because he could very well become the next card we see. He could very well be on the very bottom of the deck, so we'll have to see how that works out. All right, man, it's not looking very good for Sela right now, so we may be in some deep trouble here. All right, we are down to 3 cards in our hand, so we're going to go ahead and take a 4th. We get a Standard Bearer, which helps us with non-combat strength and constitution checks or exploring our location. We're going to go ahead and flip over the top card of the Blessing deck, and then we can look at the top card of this at the beginning of our turn. Oh, really? Boy, things just don't like us very much here. Okay, so we did that at the beginning of our turn, so now we have the options to go ahead and move. So I think we may want to go ahead and move since we don't have any magical traits again, and that would be kind of a losing cause here in this Desecrated Vault. Let's go ahead and move over here, and now we'll explore this location at the Shrine of LAMASHTU. Woof! And we get a henchman. All right. The henchmen could be very good and could be very bad. We'll have to see how this works out. So the first thing with the henchmen is if we are successful in defeating the henchmen, we could potentially close this location. So that could be really good. In this case, we have a check to defeat, which is combat of 8. However, the skeleton is immune to the mental and poison traits. So if your check to defeat the skeleton has the slashing or piercing trait, the difficulty to defeat the skeleton is increased by 3. And if defeated, you can immediately attempt to close the location, as we talked about. So thankfully, we held on to our mace. So we could go ahead and use a mace and reveal that to go ahead and say we're going to fight him in a combat. which would give us D8 for our combat strength, our combat die, which is a D8. Then we would go ahead and add another D8 from our mace. We could additionally discard the mace to add a D4. So we'd be rolling 2D8 plus 2 or 2D8 and a D4 plus 2. We really want to make sure this happens, so let's go ahead and, man, this is really painful. I don't know if we want to discard this or not. This is tough. We could discard the top card of our deck to add a D6. If it's a blessing, we could recharge it. Let's take a look at how many blessings we have on our discard pile. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blessings of the gods. Odds are this is not going to be a blessing if we were to do that. So, what do we do? This is the fun part about this game. What are the choices you want to make? How much do you want to risk going after that ancient skeleton? All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and discard the top card of this deck to add a D6. It's half plate. Okay, so we have 2 D8s plus a D6. We only revealed the mace, so the mace is going to come back into our hand. We'll go ahead and roll this. And we have, 5 plus 3 is 8. Woo-wee! Just enough. That was a good thing we did that. All right, so the ancient skeleton is defeated. Now, because he's defeated, we have the opportunity to close the location. So in this case, we have to succeed at a Divine 6 check or banish a blessing. Banishing a blessing would be pretty painful, but achieving a Divine 6 may not be so hard. So we could either roll our Wisdom Divine, which is a D8 plus 2, and we would need a 6 or higher to make sure that we get that. We really want to go ahead and do this. I think we really want to go ahead and do this. So let's go ahead and discard the Blessing of Shaylin, which says discard this card to add 2 dice to a non-combat wisdom check. Remember earlier I said this is something we want to make sure is really going to help us. So the wisdom, the divine check is a wisdom check. So it's a D8 plus 2 plus 2 additional D8s. So we're actually rolling 3 D8s plus 2 and all we need is a 6. So we automatically got it. 5, 10, 13, 14, 15, we close that location. Now, when permanently closed, upon closing, you may banish a blessing to draw a random blessing from the box. Well, in this case, because we have other cards here, we have to first search through this deck. If we find the villain in this deck, then he becomes the entirety of the location. However, if we don't, we know he's in the other location. And there is Black Fang. All right, so Black Fang now becomes the entirety of this location. The rest of these cards are put back into the box. Now, the location was closed. However, we don't close it because the villain is there. So we now have to either stay and fight Black Fang or flip back over to the Desecrated Vault. And I'm going to tell you right now, we know what is on top of that card, on top of that deck on the Desecrated Vault. So this is a really tough decision on what to do.